Nathaniel,
Hey mate.
how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Was it? I just got a message off the page saying it's not happening.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said, "Oh, this isn't on until tomorrow." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then,
And then it just came on.
yeah, so
Yeah, weird. I think it's because originally we were set up for Wednesday, right? It was a workout.
yeah. We
Yeah,
were.
and then we changed it. They changed it to the Tuesday. So yeah, how you been?
Yeah, I've in a bad situation, obviously with this lockdown, but I've been in a sort of a good position. I've got a lot of gym stuff set up in the garden, and obviously with the weather, it's been a blessing. So I'm starting to get a little bit bored now already with the rain coming down and stuff. But there's a lot more people out there in a lot worse situation than I am. So I'd like to say I'm as good as I can be. So how are you?
Yeah, same. To be honest, mate. Feel very lucky because I've got family and friends around me, and similar to yourself, set up mats in the garden and training with the missus and the kids and stuff. So yeah, feel a little bit blessed that we have something we can do. Yeah, so yeah, similar.
Like
Similar to yourself.
the first week of lockdown, I didn't have anything. Luckily, my coaches they donated everything to me. So the first week, mate, I was scratching my head. Just I don't know what to do. Um, so
There's
yeah,
only so much running you can do before you get bored out of your mind, isn't there?
exactly. I think 2 days of running, I was already like, oh, what's going on? So luckily, I've got good people around me, and I've got a bag set up and some weights and stuff. So that's all good.
Yeah, good. It's funny because I was actually having a discussion with Jay Butler yesterday on here, talking about the community and people that you meet through martial arts and stuff. And like you said, your coaches have donated you some stuff. It's good of a minute.
Yeah, 100%. And none of them have tried to charge me for it. And even though I've offered them money, they're like, no, go away and get your work in and stuff. So that's the main thing.
Nice. Well, so the first question I got for you then is basically what got you started into martial arts? When was it? How old were you? What did you first start doing in the world of martial arts?
So funny enough, the way I started martial arts, I literally just from the get-go said, I want to be a professional UFC fighter. I want to do it for a living. Um,
Nice.
I think I was either 15 or 16, and I was just doing labouring work on a building site, and I was learning carpentry. And I remember going to work thinking, I do not want to be doing this for the next 40 years of my life. And for me, it's always been a dream of mine to become a professional athlete. It doesn't matter what sport. I just want to, be a sportsman. And I've always watched the UFC, especially with my dad. He's always been into martial arts, and that seemed the only actual sport that you could kind of make a living out of at that age. If you're
Yeah.
in boxing, usually by the time you're 16, you've had, however many amateur fights, and if you're a footballer, you're probably already getting scouted. And so I thought to myself, right, I'll go along with my dad, and I'm going to become a UFC fighter. And that's what I did. Obviously,
Nice.
the first sort of 6 years, obviously, I wasn't earning anything. So, um, I was doing like roofing work, building work on the side, and then trying to just train as much as possible. So I'd work for a little bit, then go and train until eventually I could just survive on what fighting was paying me. And I've always been fortunate to have my parents who have always kind of they've put a roof over my head, and they've never. When I was training full time, they said, "Right, don't worry about paying any rent. Just go and achieve your dreams." So luckily, I've got parents that have supported me all the way. Obviously, my dad's my coach as well, so that always helps. But yeah, I don't know many people that just decide before even going to a session, I'm going to become a UFC fighter. So
Get straight into it.
yeah, I stuck with what I said I was going to do, and here we are.
Nice. And I mean, so was the first martial art that you went straight into was straight mixed martial arts, or was it kickboxing,
Well,
or?
the very first, so when I was about 10, I think I did about a year of kickboxing, and that was it. But that was purely just, I think my dad said, go and learn some self-defense. And I quit because my football, the times clashed.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, do you want to carry on with kickboxing or do you want to carry on with football? And at the time, football was my life. So that's what I did. But the very first session I walked in on was jiu-jitsu, but I went with the goal of becoming an MMA fighter. So,
Yeah.
you know, straight away I was only going to the jiu-jitsu classes to better my MMA game.
Yeah.
And, you know, I started studying Muay Thai and each discipline individually.
Oh, nice.
Until eventually, you know, I find the right team and kind of evolved it into MMA sessions. And that's what I'd say now. You know, my striking, a lot of people say, oh, do you box? And I don't. You know, I feel like my striking is just well suited for MMA.
Yeah, because actually when you fight, you look predominantly, well, when I first saw you fight back in the day, you looked predominantly like a stand-up striker. Would you put that down to training those similar styles independently?
I think when you first start in the game, you should always go away and learn each discipline itself. You know, even now, I suppose I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But if you go and actually learn the discipline for a little while in that specific sport, you get a good, you know, indication of what it's about. But for me, I find that striking is what I enjoy more, and you always usually stand out to what you enjoy. If you're a grappler and you really enjoy that, you know, most people will probably see you grapple more than you do strike. So, you know, most people think I'm just a striker, but, you know, believe me, I started with jiu-jitsu and, you know, I've got, as you know, proofs in the pudding in the UFC, I've got 3 submissions. So
Submission wins, yeah.
Yeah. It's like my plan B. You know, I always looked at it, striking's my main weapon, and then if needs be, we'll go to the ground.
Yeah. And with that being said, is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu something that you train, and do you grade in? A lot of people I know will probably want to know the answers to that. Do you train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the gi, and have you graded it or not?
So I did to start with. I would say the first 6 years I was just all gi, and that was because at the gym at the time you kind of didn't really have a choice. Everyone was in the gi, but since, you know, meeting Brad Pickett and more of a kind of, since I've had more of an MMA pro team around me, we don't train in the gi. You know, it's all no gi now, and it's what I've always preferred because being a smaller guy in the gym is very hard when you've got a big guy, you know, holding on to your collar or, you know, holding on to your gi for dear life. It's very hard to move. And being a smaller guy, you know, I try and use my speed more. So I find that no gi is a lot more enjoyable for me. But, you know, I do think the gi is just as important. But, you know, at the moment, I don't. I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but, you know, I'd like to think I'm better than a purple belt. You know, I've been training 11 years now. So, you know, I think if I had stuck with the gi, I'd like to think I'll be a black belt by now. You know, I don't know now because I haven't been in it for so long. I'll probably go and get choked out with some collar grip thing that I've never even seen before. So I think I'll stick to no gi for now.
So how would an average week look to you training if you weren't training for a fight, just generally training? How's an average week of training look to you?
So pretty much always 2 sessions a day, except for Sunday. I'll tell a lie, on a Saturday, I usually only do 1 session as well. I used to do a lot more. I used to do like 3 sessions a day, and I started to get into that burnout stage. So I've really tried to cut back now, and I need to learn when I'm doing too much. You know, I've always had the problem of overtraining rather than undertraining, and it's not good. You know, I've been overtrained before going into a fight, and it can really mess with you. So now I just try and rein it in a little bit. It's more about quality over quantity. So I get my 2 sessions in every day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening or late afternoon. And then other than that, I don't get up to much. You know, I think most people think that, you know, us UFC fighters are living some rock star life. It's not. You know, it's usually train, rest, train, repeat. But I like the simple things in life, you know, going out for a meal with my fiance or my friends and just going to the cinema or something simple.
Yeah.
And then, you know, hopefully one day I'll have enough money to go and live like a rock star.
So how does your lifestyle with your training vary for when you're training for a fight?
If I'm honest, I have not much changes because I love what I do. So there's a lot of fighters I know who their fight camp is training, and then after their fight, they don't train. And that's madness. You know, you've got to be training all year round, which is what I do. The only thing that changes for me in a fight camp is now I have to watch my weight, You know, I usually need 8 weeks, not to get ready for a fight. I need 8 weeks to get ready to make the weight. So really it is the same. I do the same sessions, but I would say the intensity comes up a little bit. And in camp, you know, I make obviously go into my sessions very strict. So, you know, say someone said to me tonight, oh, Nate, do you want to come for a bit of dinner? You know, I could take the night off and not feel too guilty about it, where if I'm in a fight camp, it's like, nope, you know, I've got to be very strict with what I do. But yeah, I love the sport. So pretty much all year round, you know, I'm training usually twice a day, except for a Sunday.
Yeah. And how do you find the mental preparation for a fight, sort of in the training and before the fight? If you can talk us through a little bit of what you go through individually.
The mental side is probably the most important and hardest part of the sport to get a hang of. I feel like now I'm in a good place. You know, I usually feel mentally bulletproof going into my fights, and I would always say that it's the weight cuts that worried me the most. Really having to cut down on your calories, it can really be mentally draining, and you know, that's the only real part of the sport that takes it out of me.
Yeah.
And you know, going into the fight, when you're in the changing rooms backstage, it's like I always describe to people, going up a roller coaster, and you've got them nerves coming in, and you're thinking, right, I could really do with getting off. But then if someone came in and said to me, do you want to just leave it? I'd say nope. You know, I really want to do it. So
yeah,
it is a weird feeling, because it's, you want to do it, but at the same time you're like, get me out of it. So
how big's the weight cut? How big's the weight cut for you?
So for me, I walk around at about, in shape and sort of healthy, not going crazy on the food, about 71, 72 kilos. And I cut down to 61 kilos. So in an 8-week period, I usually lose about 6 kilos in dieting. And then on the fight week, I usually lose about 5 or 6 kilos again. But that's all through dehydration and water weight.
Water loading. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people, they find that easy. That's like, oh, what, 12 kilos? It's nothing. But for me, it kills me. It really does. And, you know, every kilo I've got to take out in water, it usually takes me double than what the average person is. So my body just doesn't like sweating. You know, it really wants to hold on to the water. And I think I spent 6.5 hours in the sauna for that London one.
Mad.
In and out, 20 minutes in, 10 minutes out. And yeah, that was boring as hell.
And that's a test of mental strength there, isn't it?
100%.
You know, there's people that have never ever experienced that, and may never experience that as well. Like, what would your advice be to them? Or trying to even explain it to someone who's never been in that situation.
So the most healthy way of doing it is not doing it through dehydration. But for me to make 61 kilos, when I get down to 66 kilos, I'm shredded. There's no more fat on me. So there's nothing else really I can lose other than water weight. So it's all part of it, I guess, but don't do it. You know, avoid it at all costs. I have a lot of people that say to me, mate, how can I get in the shape that you are when you weigh in? And I just tell them, don't. Like, you don't want to. You know, you'll die after a day. So, avoid it at all costs. But yeah, for all the athletes out there, I would say, get paid if you're going to cut a big amount of weight, because it's not worth it. You know, if you're just getting paid. When I was in my before I went into the Cage Warriors, I said to my manager, I'm not cutting down to bantamweight anymore unless it's a big fight. And from that moment on, every fight was a big fight. So I stayed. For me, it's worth it. I'm getting paid decent money, and you know, this is obviously my life. But there's semi-pros out there, and they're trying to cut 10 kilos, and I'm like, go and learn how to like actually fight first before you start worrying about cutting 10, 15 kilos. You know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of emphasis is put on the weight cut and your opponent, isn't it? And this is the problem, like you say. Actually, the more important part is actually learning how to fight and perfecting your game, exactly. Right? Because that's what you're going to need ultimately in the cage. Have you found like a weight cut has ever affected your performance in any way in any of your fights, amateur to pro?
No, I think the biggest cut, I think I've cut about 3.5/4 kilos. And don't get me wrong, it kills me doing it. But the next night when I've performed, I've always been, touch wood, I've always been absolutely fine. I've never had an issue. I've never gone into a fight feeling drained. you know, whether that's just my adrenaline rush is kicking in, but I've got a nutritionist, Mr. Sport. You know, he gives me now exactly what I've got to do, and you know, I stick to that, and I've always felt good going into the fights.
Yeah, a lot of people use Mr. Sport, don't they? It's quite a common one, actually. Yeah, I heard his name a lot coming up and down with the nutrition. Yeah, I mean, in your like earlier fights, were you cutting the same amount of weight as you're cutting now, or would you say you're cutting weight now?
No, when I was younger, I walked around a lot lighter. So when I first started, I was 18, my first fight. So when I was 18, I was probably walking around at like 64 kilos. And then obviously as I've matured, I've filled out, you know, I'm a lot thicker now than I was. So for me, the night before one fight, I think I had a kebab. You know, I went and got one. And then the next night, walked in, weighed in, and, you know, I never had an issue. But as I've got older, I'm getting my weight, I'm putting it on. And now, you know, if I go and have a couple of biscuits the next day, I'm like, oh, shit, I look at the scales. And it's gone up a couple of pounds. So, you know, I definitely say to people, the young fighters that are like 18, 19, you're going to put weight on. So, you know, just bear that in mind when you're looking at weight categories to fight.
And do you bet you bounced around a few weight categories then in your amateur career, or did you stay predominantly?
At the time, the show that I was fighting on was also my coach at the time. So he usually just sort of said to me, look, what weight are you fighting at? We'll get you at that weight. So I think one fight, I fought 63 kilos, that sort of thing. We didn't really have to worry too much about making exact weights. But that was the same for my opponent. You know, we both weighed
of course, yeah.
And then I fought a featherweight before a couple of times. But yeah, it was only probably until I got to the Cage Warriors days where it became a lot more professional in regards to making weight. You know, obviously you have to take that a lot more serious now. And, you know, if an opponent has a couple of kilos on you, it can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Where in the early days, you know, I could be that far ahead. My opponent, a couple of kilos isn't going to matter. But now, being in the UFC, where everyone's literally as good as the other person. And it's just who turns up on the night. So if you can get a couple kilo advantage, then, you know, that would be amazing for you.
And how did the UFC call up come for you? Obviously I know, but for the people that don't know, how did that call up come about for you?
So I went on an absolute tear on Cage Warriors, which was the sort of promotion below the UFC. You know, I became the champ on that. I defended the belt twice, and at the time I knew I was going to get the call, even though, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I bet you was really shocked when they came, and I wasn't really, because I kind of knew that they're going to come if you win this fight. So I was actually on the toilet and my manager texted me and just said, he just said the date, and he said UFC, New York, whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, that's it. Yes. No moment. So
all the times on the toilet as well.
Yeah, I quickly got off the toilet and then I went. So I think when he offered me, it was about 8 weeks. So there was no kind of rest time. You know, it was right. Get off the toilet and go and train.
And how did it feel prepping for that fight? Obviously, because you would have had to train back here at home, and then there would have been an intermittent period where you'd be training over in New York as well. How did that all feel, getting ready for that fight?
Really, it just felt normal. You know, it's obviously been a long time coming, and as I said from the get-go, I always said to myself, I'm going to be a UFC fighter. And so when I got the call, it was a great feeling, but it did feel just, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. But then after the fight, when I watched it back and I saw me coming out, the UFC gloves and, you know, the UFC announcers and stuff, that was like, whoa, this is pretty surreal. And it does now, you know, when I actually think about it, you kind of have to pinch yourself. But in the moment, it just feels like another fight. And I'd say the same for even when I compete in the UFC. It's a cage. It's in front of people. It's the same thing as the other shows. But then when you watch it back and you see Bruce Buffer and that sort of stuff, it's like, whoa, that's new me on the telly. So yeah, it is a weird feeling for sure.
And I mean, how are the pre-fight nerves, especially with an event like that? The first time you fought on the UFC, like you say, it's the pinnacle of what you're looking to achieve, right? How did you feel just before the fight and going out for the fight?
Again, I felt it's a weird one because I felt fine, and then just before I went out for the fight, I worked out how much I'm getting paid, and I thought, shit, if I don't win this fight, I'm actually getting paid less than what I was getting on cage. I was like, in my head, I was thinking, don't fuck it up, you know, don't mess this up. So luckily for me, I went out, I got the win, because obviously in the UFC you get paid. Say you're getting paid $10,000 to fight, you can double if you win.
Yeah,
sort of double. So I won, and I got the 50 G's bonus.
yeah,
So I literally went from earning nothing to you know, walking away with a 50 grand bonus as well as my fight purse and the win.
yeah.
So that was it's a bit of an unreal feeling, that, especially when I found that I won it. So yeah, I was actually walking into the fight thinking about how much I'm paid.
Thinking about the money.
Yeah, so it was weird that because I didn't think about that at all until literally 5 minutes before the fight. I'd already warmed up, everything was fine. You know, I had the sort of nerves, like I said, about a roller coaster, but I wasn't scared about the fight. I wasn't scared about getting hurt. Everything felt normal. And then, yeah, literally, as I was just waiting to go out, I thought, oh shit, I don't get much if I lose. Yeah, that was a weird one to go out to, but usually I always feel amazing. I always get my coach Brad to slap me, you know, a few times before I go into the cage, and that knocks any of the nerves out of me. And yeah, you know, I'm just usually excited. You know, I know that the roller coaster is about to happen, and you know, I usually just say to myself, this has been 8 or 10 weeks of hell, you know, in the gym and cutting weight. So enjoy every second.
And how have you found, obviously, with great people around you like that have fought in the UFC, when you were first coming up and training with them, did that give you the extra boost confidence when it came to approaching fights?
Yeah, I always think that it's who you train with can determine how far you go in the sport. And, you know, as soon as I started training with Brad, at the time he was still fighting, I was like, I'm with the best guy at my weight class that I could possibly be with, really, in Europe. And that's a confidence booster. You know, obviously when if you're training with black belts in jiu-jitsu and you're tapping them or something like that, you know that how high level you are. So the fact that I was sparring and training with the best in the UK and, in my eyes, Europe, and I was doing pretty well, it was giving me that confidence boost that I needed. You know, anyone can go into a gym with very low level guys and be the king of the gym. So, you know, to go in a gym where there's guys that are very good and they're higher level than you, that will always give you a confidence booster once you start doing well against them.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were scheduled to fight on a Polaris event, right, for grappling?
Yeah.
And just talk us through why you were put on for that show. Is it something you just wanted to venture into grappling a bit as well to keep you ticking over, or?
Yeah, I love competing, and I know the guys that run Polaris, so they just said to me they got a show on. You know, I didn't have a fight booked at the time, so as long as I haven't got a fight booked, the UFC allows me to, you know, do what I want in regards to jiu-jitsu competitions and that sort of thing. So I've actually been matched on there 3 times, but every time the UFC announced a fight, and you know, I had to cancel it. So it was nice to actually go, right, I get to compete, and there's not as many nerves for that. You know, I don't have to cut weight, and you know, I go in. If I try something, it doesn't work, and I end up losing the match, it's not a problem. You know, that's not my source of income. That's not, you know, I can't risk practicing things in a UFC fight. I have to just go out, get the win, and do what I do best. Whereas, you know, for me, a grappling competition, I can, you know, have a little bit more of a play around, and you know, if there's some cool heel hook that I've seen, I can try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And obviously they offered me against Brett Johns, who's also, you know, a high level bantamweight in the UFC. So for me, it was a bit more exciting to, you know, go against someone from the MMA world. And, you know, I just love competing. So as I say, I started with jiu-jitsu, and, you know, I'm pretty confident in my skill set going into a tournament like Polaris.
Yeah. And do you find that you're training, obviously for MMA, you're training heavily more in wrestling, or is it just no-gi, full stop, all round?
Once I met Brad, he turned around and sort of said to me, look, you got good jiu-jitsu and you got good striking, but your wrestling's lacking a bit, where I just hadn't really trained it. So since then, I've focused a lot more on wrestling, but I still get my grappling in. Yeah, the only difference now is that the grappling we do, I do a lot of jiu-jitsu with my coach, Ashley Grimshaw. We focus more on the MMA grappling. Obviously in jiu-jitsu, you can be on your back, it's not a problem. If anything, you could be more dangerous off your back than on top. But in MMA, that's not a position you want to be when you're getting punched and elbowed in the face. So we focus on a lot more grappling orientated on for our MMA game, opposed to back in the day when I was playing more sort of guard game and that sort of thing. So that's something we focused on a lot more. But I like all of it. I like wrestling, I like jiu-jitsu, I like striking. And, I'd say during the week, I probably get more striking in because my dad's my coach as well. So it's very easy for me to have a pad man available. Whereas grappling, I have to go to the gym, meet my coach, that sort of thing. But yeah, I would say my sessions are pretty even in regards to wrestling, jiu-jitsu. I try and bring them both up together at the same time.
Yeah. And so you've been venturing over to grappling shows such as Polaris. Is there any thoughts or potential visions on boxing or going over into the striking side of things?
Unless they give me that Mayweather money. I want to keep my brain, and boxing, you take a lot of headshots. So, I think I'll avoid that one unless I'm getting paid some good money.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just a few people commented here. Rob said that your ground game is very underestimated because you're so used to knocking people out.
Yeah.
It's true, right? It's true. And like you said, you've had 3 good submission wins UFC, haven't you, as well?
A lot of people after them submissions are saying to me, what's going on? Like, why aren't you knocking people out? And I don't know. The name of the sport.
These things happen, they come this way. So, one of the other things I wanted to talk about as well, just sort of going around, was how did it mentally affect you after a loss? Because obviously that part of fighting is such a big part of fighting as well. It can make and break people. Mm-hmm. How have you dealt with losses mentally?
So when I had my losses before, because I had, until the loss that I just had, I hadn't lost for 4 years, something like that. And those losses back then were devastating. I was like, that's it. The world's ending. That's it. I'm going to have to jack this in. I'm going to have to go back to building and doing stuff I don't want to do. And then I dealt with anxiety and depression as well since then. And going through that sort of time, and now I'm okay. So going through that sort of stage made me realize that the things that I'd usually worry about and think end of the world are really very small. I just lost to Dodson. I didn't get knocked out, but I got dropped and TKO'd, whatever you want to call it. And that's the worst that can happen. I got up and I thought to myself, okay, I've still got a roof over my head. I just got paid very good money still. I've got a missus waiting for me back at home. I've got friends. There's so many good things that I've got. And in the world, there's so much going wrong, such as, little kids dying of illnesses or whatever it be. I feel selfish to mope around about the loss. I just think to myself, you lost. If you're a football player, you're going to lose a game. If you're an MMA fighter, you're probably going to lose a fight or a match or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, So I can either sit there and mope around and feel sorry for myself when everyone else is probably thinking, mate, get up and crack on. Or I can just, get back on the horse, get back in the gym, and we do it again. And, that's the way I look at it now. So I'm not really moping about now if I take a loss. It's the same in the gym. I used to walk away, and if someone had tapped me in jiu-jitsu, I'd walk away fuming and thinking, that's it, it's over. And, now you learn. You win or you learn.
And you're completely right as well. That the loss doesn't define you, does it? You still got your friends, your family, the people that are most important to you. That doesn't ever change. They still love you the same and see you the same.
Yeah. And I think going through obviously the depression stage, that made me realise that, you know, just losing a fight is nothing. So, you know, I feel like now I've matured and I've learned how to deal with losses so much more. Whereas, you know, when I was younger, I'd be crying my eyes out and thinking the world's ending.
So, what if you don't mind me asking? What brought on the depression stage and the anxiety stage? And how did you battle your way through it?
I think it came from spending too much time on my own. In this sport, obviously, I was full-time training then, and I'd do, say, hour and a half session in the morning, which was in North London. So it'd take me an hour and a half on the train, and then an hour and a half back. So that day I would spend 3 hours just on the train. And usually I was with my coach, Brad, and he had gone away, I think, on holiday to training camp, sorry. So for a couple of months, I was just sitting on my own a lot. And I think I just let my thoughts go away with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I tell you sometimes like little worries or problems I've got going on, you might think, mate, chill out. And that's it, you move on. But because I was on my own, I guess you start to put yourself into a bit of a crap state, maybe. If you've got that little dark cloud over you and you need that distraction. So, you know, eventually as I got better, I learned that, you know, take a book or take your headphones, listen to some music, you know, get distracted. But at the time, I think I spent way too much time just thinking about stuff I didn't need to be thinking about, and, you know, things that aren't actually that bad, I'm thinking are, you know, worse than they are. And then I guess once you put yourself into that state, it's hard to get out of it. And you know, I've got OCD as well. So for me, if I have a worry or a thought, I think about it all day.
Constantly going round and round your head.
Yeah. A lot of people, you know, they get distracted. Having a full-time job, if you start your job at 9 o'clock, you know, from 9 till 5, you're pretty busy and you probably haven't got time to stress about anything.
Yeah.
Whereas me, you know, other than that hour and a half session in the morning and hour and a half session in the evening, I've got all day to kind of, you know, just think about stuff that's just not even worth doing. And yeah, it's not a nice place to be in. You know,
how do you find managing the OCD with your fighting and stuff? Is there ways that you can make it benefit you instead of hindering you?
Yes, there are actually, because, you know, it's not necessarily the healthiest thing, but I might be going on a run or doing sprints, and I say to myself, I've got to do one more. I've got to do one more. I've got to do one more. And it can be, I guess, dangerous because you end up killing yourself on the treadmill or something. But, you know, I try to use it as best as I can to my advantage. But it is draining, you know. It's very, especially dealing with kind of anxiety, depression, OCD all at once. You know, if I'm in a bit of everyone gets anxious, you know. Let's not pretend that it's just me. So if someone's feeling anxious, they might feel anxious for a day and then they move on, or they might be worried about something and then distracted. But when you got that OCD and you keep stressing about something, it's very hard to just let it go.
Yeah. I think, do you know what? Anxiety is something that a lot of people don't really understand as well. And like you said, you're not the only one that suffers from it. Like, so many people suffer from it, but they just don't know what it is. If you were having to sort of explain to someone about anxiety and how it impacts your life, how would you explain that to someone?
I would say that it's just like worrying about something, but constantly. And for me, it's always worrying about such things that are far-fetched. You know, I remember even when I was a little kid, I'd be at school, and if I had a headache, I automatically think I'm going to die. You know, I think I've got something serious here. And instead of just kind of, you know, acknowledging I've got a headache, chill out, all day I'm thinking that's it. And the worst thing you can do is Google stuff as well.
Yeah, man.
You know,
big time. Because it's so easy to do, right? It's so easy.
And then, you know, you kind of become unrealistic. So I'll have that thought, instead of just thinking I've got a headache, you know, I think, you know, I've got something serious. And then if someone else told me that, I'd be like, no, you've just got a headache, mate. But I would be thinking, no, that's it, I'm ill. you know, I've got something seriously wrong with me. I'm going to have to go to hospital. And then, you know, the next day my worries are gone, or, you know, my headache's gone, sorry.
Yeah.
But you're still constantly worrying all the time, and it's very hard to let go. But for me, I always get anxious and stuff over stuff that's not really
important, like, well, what other people would think is important. Yeah.
Yeah, things that aren't even true, or it's very unrealistic. Whereas most people worry about things like how much are they going to earn that week. I don't care. You know what I mean? Little things like that I'm not bothered about. So it's definitely a strange one for sure.
Have you found that it's impacted, other than the travelling back and forth, like you said that time? Have you found that it's impacted your training or any MMA career, or part of your MMA career at all?
When I went through the bad stage, it was affecting my training. But now I've learned to deal with it. And, you know, that's why I say now I don't get nervous about things like fighting, because, you know, it really is a choice thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of micromanaging how you're thinking and why you're thinking a certain way as well. There's a great book, actually, The Chimp Paradox, which talks about managing the inner chimp and the way that you process your thoughts. Really, really good for psychology for fighting and athletes and stuff, actually.
Rob is a good friend of mine. He's just put in the comment about it forms overthinking, and that's what I would say. You know, is you overthink things. So instead of just having a worry or a thought and then letting it go, you constantly think. It's very draining. You know, that's the word. It's very frustrating.
How did you find that you managed to take yourself out of that? If you ever get in that process of thinking, of overthinking things, what do you do to try and get yourself through that?
Luckily, I've got my parents and my fiance who I can always talk to, and always having someone to talk to helps. So, you know, if I thought I was bad, I'd hate to think what someone's like who hasn't got anyone to talk to. You know, that's when I think it's very, very important that you go to a doctor or something. But having the right people around you to reassure you, I think that's what helps me. Obviously, you can go to the doctors and get medication and everything, but you know, I definitely feel that talking to the right people will always help. But maybe just be careful of talking to the wrong people. There could be people out there that won't help. You know,
a lot of people like to see people fail, right?
Yes.
And this is the thing, isn't it? So surrounding yourself with good people, and I think that personally, that's why when I talk about martial arts, that's the beauty of martial arts to me, is you surround yourself with good, positive people that want to succeed and evolve just like you do.
Yeah.
And like you say, that's a really good bit of advice, actually, is picking the right people to talk to.
Yeah, because you could have people that make your anxiety worse.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, let's just say someone's got a worry that their partner's going out that night and they're going to cheat on them. You might tell your mate and you might go, yeah, you're right. You know, what's she up to right now? And they make it worse.
Yeah.
Whereas you need that person to sort of rein it in a little bit and say, hey, mate, chill out, man. You're being a little bit far-fetched here. So, yeah, you know, always surround yourself with the people that are going to help.
Yeah, mate. Couldn't be a truer thing to hear, mate. Gonna take it back to the martial arts again, because I could talk to you about this stuff for ages otherwise. So back in your amateur career, what was your favourite fight?
Did we say amateur career?
Yeah, in your amateur career, yeah.
I beat my debut. My first semi-pro fight, which at the time, as I was in the fight, felt like hell. I thought to myself, what am I doing? Like this. During the fight, I remember I felt super fit going in the fight, and as soon as the fight started, I was kind of panic mode, but getting your hand raised and just, you know, that for me was like, I just won my UFC title, you know, because having your first semi-pro fight, and obviously, like I said, where I said to myself, I'm doing this for a living, if I had lost my first fight, that would have been a big knock in confidence.
Yeah.
So to go in there, get a win and get a submission win, you know, I felt like I was the man.
There's no other feeling like it, is there? That's the thing.
That's it.
And so your favourite pro victory to date?
Josh Reed. I don't know if you saw that fight.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
not while I was in the fight. At the time, I was like, whoa, like my head was rocked. But you know, I think it's got like 30 million views overall. It's gone viral, and you know, I can see why, because I was getting my ass kicked and turned it around. So,
yeah, mate.
you know, to look up at the crowd, because before coming out of that fight, I could see everything kicking off, the Welsh versus the English in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of, you know, represent. Going in there that first 2 minutes, I wasn't representing, and I just remember thinking I've let everyone down. So to turn it around in the first round as well, and just look up and see everyone on their feet was, you know, it was something special.
Yeah, yeah, mate. That was an awesome fight, by the way. One of the other questions that was asked a lot earlier before we started talking about mental health was, what's the one fight you're looking forward to in the future?
If he ever accepts a fight with me, Chito Vera.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's the only sort of guy that I've had talk shit to me on social medias and stuff. So, you know, that's a fight I would like, but I don't think he's ever going to fight me. So, I don't know. I would really like to fight Cody Garbrandt. You know,
Oh, yeah.
All that makes for an exciting fight. You know, he's very, very dangerous, but he comes to fight, and that's always the style that, you know, I'd like to go up against.
Yeah, he's aggressive, really, really aggressive.
There's nothing worse than fighting someone who's just a runner, you know, and runs around. That's, you know, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. And so, hypothetically speaking, how would you look to prepare for that fight without giving too much away?
I would always do the same thing I've always done. I think if it's not broke, don't fix it. And even though I just lost my last fight, you know, that wasn't really down to anything wrong in the camp or skill set. You know, it was, I got caught, and it happens. You know, I think, and that's where now, like, my anxiety, I used to look into it too much. I think, why did I get caught? And really, it's just, that's part and parcel of MMA, like playing a game of chess. You know, you make mistakes and you learn from it. So, you know, I'll stick with the team I've got now, and I'll come back a better fighter.
Yeah, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. So, other than those two people, there isn't anyone else you'd like to fight?
No. Anyone that's ranked above me. Sorry, mate. Anyone that's ranked above me would like to fight. That would be exciting. You know, I always want to have a challenge, and if they're ranked, you know, that's a challenge.
Where, if you had to choose anywhere you could fight, where would it be?
The Fight Island.
Yeah,
wherever that is. You know, the thought of fighting on an island with no fans and just Dana White sitting there telling us to fight. That sounds like a kung fu movie.
Like Mortal Kombat.
That's it.
So actually answer my next question, because I was going to ask you what you actually think of that, where they're trying to put obviously a card together on that island and stuff with all this going on. You kind of answered my question. Yeah,
I'm all for it. Even if this wasn't going on, the thought of it, you know, I like it. It is literally like Mortal Kombat, and you know, I'm game if they offer me a fight on the island. So I'm not sure where it is, but I'd like to think it would be a hot place. It'd be good if I turn up and it's snowing. So yeah, you know, a nice hot tropical island and a little cage set up in it. That's a bit of me.
Yeah. I think it'd be a strange one to do with no crowd, though, right?
Yeah. It would be weird. I'm all for them experiences, though, so it'd definitely be one to try. Yeah, definitely.
Well, mate, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and talking. And the mental health part of it is such a hard part to get out of people to speak about. And obviously, this Be More Foundation is all for that, trying to get people to contact and feel like they can speak to people if they need to.
One of the things I've never really, I don't ever really speak about it, but it's one that I'm not embarrassed to talk about. I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on with mental health at the moment, a lot of people talking about it, and I do feel like there's a lot of people out there that they, exaggerate it for, you know, like it's a fashion thing. Health, I've got this. So, you know, I don't ever want to come across that. So if anyone ever asks me, you know, I'm not embarrassed. I'll happily talk about it. But I do feel like there's a lot of people out there now that just kind of play along with it. And
Playing on it, yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's such a hard, you can't, if someone says they're depressed, you can't really say, no, you're not. But, you know, I think there is a lot of people out there that might be having a bad day. And instead of just saying they're upset, they all of a sudden diagnosing themselves as depressed.
Yeah.
It's a different level.
Completely different ball game. And if you've never experienced it, it's something, yeah, you couldn't really get your head around, isn't it? This is the thing. One of the ways I've been finishing all of these interviews was basically, what advice would you give to people in this situation at the moment? Because obviously mental health is such a big thing in this time where we're all locked in. What advice would you give to people at this time?
Talk to someone. And if you haven't got someone to talk to, find someone to talk to, whether it's a doctor. If you're in lockdown on your own, get on the phone. There's a little poem there. Yeah, you know, there are people out there to talk to. You know, I've never myself had to go to a helpline or such. You know, I've got family and friends that I talk to. And if you haven't, talk to me. You know, I'm always on the social media, so anyone can ever drop me a message or something, but don't suffer alone. That's what I'd say. Nice, mate. Brilliant. Thank you so much for giving us the time. Thank you for the chat, and we'll be keeping eyes on your career, of course, mate. Wish you all the best. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you doing some more training sessions, potentially on Zoom with the guys and outdoors. That's it. When the weather's nice. Sun comes, I'll be getting on the sessions. Brilliant. Thank you for that, Nathaniel, mate. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Take care. See you soon, mate. Bye-bye.